Shalom, my name is Ron Elkin. I'm director of AMI Ministry. That's A as in Apple, M as in Mary, M as in Mary again, I as in Ice. And you can contact us at Post Office Box 481, Willow Grove, that's two words, Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, 19090. Today I'm going to be doing a series of teaching on the Middle East conflict, particularly focused on the Israelis and the Palestinians conflict. And we're going to answer some questions. Are the Jewish people recent residents of Israel? Do they have a continuous presence in the land? Are they colonizers of the land and recent immigrants there? Did they steal the land from the Palestinians? Who are the Palestinians? Are they the ancient people that are they connected to the Philistines that lived in the area? Have they lived there for centuries? What was the condition of the land prior to the large-scale immigration of Jewish people into the land in the late 19th century and 20th century? What is the conditions of the Arabs living in Israel today? Is Israel an apartheid state, as being accused of by some of the people? Is Zionism racist? What is Zionism? Why bother learning the facts about Israel and the Palestinians? Well, we're just going to do an overview here of the different facts relating to the Jewish people's presence in the land. To answer some of these questions, the first question is, has there been a continuous settlement of Jewish people in the land? Well, we know that God called Abraham out of his homeland and called him to the promised land, the land that he said that he would establish him. And he said, I will bless you and I'll make you a great nation. And those who bless you, I will bless, and those who curse you, I will curse. And we know that the great blessing that God promised, where he said he would bless all the people of the earth, we know that the great blessing that we're talking about comes through the Messiah, Jesus. Jesus came not only for the Jewish people, but for everyone who will believe in him, both Jew and Gentiles. And I believe because of the fulfillment of prophecy that he completed at his first appearance, and the way that he enters into people's lives and changes them for the good, and gives them the power of God to live new lives and productive lives, that he really is the promised Messiah who was prophesied in the Jewish scriptures. But he also came for the Gentiles. So there's the great blessing that came through Abraham that has come to the world. Now about the land itself, in Genesis 17:8, God made a promise to Abraham. He said, the whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give you as an everlasting possession, and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Now, this is an unconditional promise. There are some promises in the Bible that are conditional, based on the behavior and the obedience, but here is not something that is attached to law keeping. It is a covenant promise that God made. And then later on, he circumcised the Jewish people, the males of the Jewish people, to confirm this covenant. It's a sign of the covenant. Now, there's a long period of time between this promise to Abraham and until the Jewish people actually possessed the land. They spent 400 years in Egypt, then they wandered in the desert for 40 years in the exile, and then they entered the land under the leadership of Joshua in 1500 BC. Now, after the death of Joshua, the men of Judah captured Jerusalem, and you can find this story in Judges 1:8. Now, David became king in 1000 BC, and he greatly expanded the Hebrew Empire. Solomon built the temple in 957 BC, and the Philistines, who the land was later named for, or sort of was taken off their name, the Philistines were not Semitic people. Both the Jews and Arabs are Semitic people. The Philistines were Aegean Sea people, um, and they populated the area of Gaza, which is right along the uh, sea coast. They were not related to the present day Palestinians in any way. Some of the Palestinians are claiming that they are descendants of these Philistine people. It's not true, because in 600 BC, the Babylonians wiped out the Philistines, and there is no ethnic connection because, again, they were not Semitic. They came from the Aegean Sea. Now, in 600, in 586 BC, or as Jewish people say, BCE, before the Common Era, there was a destruction of the temple in Jerusalem by the Babylonian army. And most of the Jewish people were carted off out of the land to Babylon. However, there was a remnant of people left in the land. They were poor, they were elderly, and they were not taken to Babylon. So there was a continuous presence of Jewish people in the land. They came into the land in 1500 BC, and to this very day, there's been a continuous presence of Jewish people in the land. Now, they returned from the exile in three waves. The first was led by Zerubbabel in 338 BC. Then they later returned under Ezra the priest, and then Nehemiah. And during this period of time, the second temple in Jerusalem was built. And the walls around Jerusalem were also built because there were people in the land who were opposed to the Jews coming back there. King Herod II expanded the second temple greatly and made it a very beautiful building. Now, tragically, this building was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD because of the revolt of the Jewish people against the Roman Empire. They wanted freedom from this oppressive outside influence. Then there was another revolt against the Roman Empire in 132 AD, led by Bar Kokhba. And he was proclaimed to be the Messiah by one of the famous rabbis, Rabbi Akiba. And it was a false prophecy because both Akiba and Bar Kokhba were killed, and the revolt was put down, and the Romans were fed up with the Jewish people's desire to be free of them. So they expelled them from the city, and they actually destroyed the city, and later on it was rebuilt, and they even renamed it. And as a way of tampering down the Jewish people's desire for nationalism, they renamed the land Palestine. So that's where that name comes from. Now, this is a lot of these quotes and things that I have here are from a book by Dr. Michael Rydelnik. He's written a very good book called Understanding the Arab and Israeli Conflict, What the Headlines Haven't Told You. It's published by Moody Publishers from Chicago, and is published in 2007. Now, after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, there was a remnant of Jewish people staying in the land, particularly staying in two of the four holy cities of Judaism. They were staying in Tiberias, up in the northern area, not far from the Sea of Galilee, and Safed. This is considered to be a city now it's become a city of mystical learning. Well, actually, for the last 1,000 years, a city of mystical learning, and religious Jews are there studying and looking at what's called the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical writings. And so they're the two cities that remain populated by Jewish people even after the destruction of the temple. Then you have the Byzantine rule. Now, they took over under Constantine. When he converted to Christianity, his mother visited the Holy Land, and she I guess she decided, talking to people, that there were certain sites that were historical sites where Jesus was at, such as the tomb and other areas where the tomb he was buried and where he was crucified and so on. And so she had churches built there. And then under his son Constantius, there was very restrictive laws enacted against the Jewish people. The Jews had been somewhat restricted under Constantine, but they became even more restricted under his son. And this continued. Now, because of this horrible oppression, when the Persians invaded the area, the Jewish people sided with the Persians, and they helped them with the invasion. And when the Persians were victorious, they gave the Jewish people the administration of the city of Jerusalem. Later on, however, this backfired because when the Byzantines retook the area, they expelled the Jewish people. And so, but the Jewish people still remained in the land in other areas. And so it was not easy. Some of the Jewish people were killed and their property stolen, of course. And the Byzantines weren't happy that the Jews sided with their invaders. Then the Islamic rule took place in 636 AD to 1099 AD. Initially, the Jews in Palestine were treated fairly. They were allowed to worship as they pleased. They had a measure of protection. They did have property rights. However, they did have to pay a special tax under Sharia law. Just a side note, if Islamic was to take over America for some reason, and people here that were not converted to Islam, we would have to pay a special tax to remain in the land. We would not have the right to vote. We would be second-class citizens, and we'd be subject to the whims of our Islamic conquerors. It seems far-fetched, I know, but we don't know the way things are going, what God will do. As the population in America revolts against God and turns their back on God and tries to create a non-God reality, that's really what secular humanism is. It's trying to create another reality that is not geared to God's reality. God is truth. God is the one who created the world and the universe and all that's in it. He is the one who ordains reality because it's real, and God is real, and what God ordains is real is reality. And so there's a whole population in America that has turned its back on God, and we don't know how God's going to punish us. When Israel in the Old Testament, you can read over and over, as Israel disobeyed God and turned their back on God, God brought in conquerors and caused them great distress. And it might happen to us. Well, that's under the initial Islamic rule, the Jews were treated fairly. But in the 8th century, these restrictions began to become much more severe. They were limited in their Jewish observances. There was a heavier tax put on them. Their legal status changed, and they were restricted in many other ways.